If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place.
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown. He's going to fire upfield. It's broken up. Tipped and intercepted by the Colts.
This is the official Colts Podcast, giving you an updated look at what's new with the Horseshoes.
Colts have it. Interception. 2 seconds left, and the Colts are going to win.
In the Indiana Union Construction Industry radio studio, let's get the podcast started.
You know, I was the best man at my best friend's second wedding. And when it got time for me to do my best man speech, I said, "Welcome back, everybody."
Oh, Lord.
He was not happy.
There he is.
Just kidding. That did not happen.
Top shelf.
Yeah,
Easy, man.
that did not happen. But we welcome you back to the official Colts Podcast, presented by Bill Brooks and Casey Vallier. I'm Matt Taylor. Hell of a start, right? We're off and running,
Come in with
baby.
a bang. That's for sure.
Wow. We're getting you primed and ready. We're in week 3 form here as the Colts are getting ready for the Ravens. Let's talk about it. Let's go back to week 2, Bill. The Houston Texans, the Colts obviously took care of business there. What were you most encouraged by?
Well, one of the things I was encouraged by was
Not my joke, by the way.
one of the things I was encouraged by is the way the offense converted on third down.
Mm-hmm.
They were 6 of 12 on third down, and you know what? To me, that showed a lot about what they did on first and second down as well, because they had 7 opportunities where they were 3rd and 5 or less, and they converted on 5 of those 7
Absolutely.
opportunities. So to me, I think that was huge. So if the offense can continue to be efficient on first and second down, of course, it's going to make third down easy. So that's one of the things that I was impressed with the offense from going from week 1 to week 2.
What about you, sir? 4 for 4 for the Colts in the red zone. Bill mentioned third down. The defense only gave up 52 yards to Damian Pierce and company.
Right.
I mean, that was – I know the score was kind of close there towards the end, as that the Texans had a chance to make it a one-score game if they knocked down that long field goal there in the fourth quarter. But, Casey, that was a game where basically by halftime you felt really good about the Colts and their chances to take that home.
That's the best way to think about it, because that's ultimately what it was. Yes, it's 31-20 on the scoreboard, and yes, they had an opportunity late to cut it to a one-score game, but it never really felt like it was that close, which I'm not trying to say that, hey, I know all, but someone asked me last week, what do you think it's going to be? And I said, honestly, I think the Colts win, and it might be closer on the scoreboard than what the actual feel is. I felt like it was going to be a comfortable lead throughout.
Yep.
The way they started, I mean, you get out 14-0 early, and it just kind of, you could feel everything go out of that building in Houston. Like the gasp in the building was like, wow, all of a sudden we just showed up and we're already down 14 points. I feel like the Colts were able to kind of pose their will, if you will, and they took control of things early, and it just set up for the rest of the game. And I'm glad Bill brought up third downs and you brought up the red zone, because those were areas that we really talked about ad nauseum last week on, the game against the Jags. There were a handful of areas you can improve on, but you really highlighted those couple areas. And I know it's it's just 1 week sample size. You can't say that's how it's going to be the rest of the season, but it looked like that was an area that they emphasized.
Yep.
And you saw that come to fruition.
Well, especially in the red zone. I mean, you save your best plays for your best players.
Right.
And there was execution there. I mean,
Yes.
the fake jet sweep.
Oh, man.
The fake to Josh Downs. And Shane Steichen talked about it on Monday. The ball handling on that play, if you go back and watch the film and you look at the All-22 copy or the end zone copy of the All-22, like the way that Richardson is faking the handoff on the jet sweep. I mean, everything had to be perfect on that play, and it was, because they repped it so meticulously all week in practice. I just love, as a former player, I mean, I can appreciate this, Bill, you can too. I mean, as a former football player, and certainly as a coach, when something like that comes to fruition and you call the right play at the right time, like there's no better high in the world. It's like, oh my God, we just pulled it off and it worked and we got 6 points out of it.
And when you execute it like they did, just like you say, hey, this is going to happen. This is what we're going to look at right now here in practice, and we're going to execute it this way. And then when it happens in the game, it just feels that much better when you
lose your mind on the sidelines.
It actually feels that much better when you actually execute the play and then, of course, score.
everything was great about the play, but the one thing they did not get enough credit was the block by Michael Pittman.
Yes.
Oh, man. I mean, I'm sure, Pittman's a guy, he really likes to, go out there and
like
flex his muscles a little bit, show he's a tough guy. That was a great way to put it on tape. Yeah. I'm sure he was probably more excited about that than anything else that happened.
And was coming back into the box, right? And that is a huge block on that play. There's no doubt about that. All right, the Thursday crew is with you. We got a loaded show the rest of the way. We've already talked about week 2 improvements. Coming up, we're going to obviously we're going to visit with one of the heroes or the stars of week number 2. That would be Zack Moss. He's going to join us here on the podcast in just a little bit. He's fresh off of 88 yards on 18 carries, his first performance in 2023, coming off a broken forearm during training camp. But right now, before we get into Mr. Moss, let's go to Can the Colts Afford It? That's the next chapter of this podcast. So you're going into week 3. You're 1-1. You're in a first-place tie with the Jaguars and the Titans. Baltimore's 2-0. They look really good. They're one of only 2 teams in the AFC right now that's undefeated. The Miami Dolphins would be the other. Let's talk about some items going forward, Casey and Bill, and debate if the Colts can, quote-unquote, afford it starting in week number 3. So we all know about where the Colts are at now, right now, I should say, in their quarterback situation with Anthony Richardson being still in the concussion protocol as we tape this right now on Thursday. So his status for the game still up in the air, and we know about just 5 quarters of football so far. He's been injured 3 different times, an ankle. He's had a knee, now the concussion. He's been contacted a lot. He's listed – he's a brick house, 6'5", 250, 255 pounds. I think when you extrapolate it out, he's the biggest – size-wise and measurable-wise, he's the biggest quarterback on an NFL roster right now. But as we've seen, going from the SEC and major college football up to the National Football League, he's still susceptible to hits. And he took that hit, we think, on that second rushing touchdown in the first quarter, landed awkwardly or kind of hard on the back of his head on the turf after he scored that touchdown, which begs the question, Bill, can the Colts afford Richardson to keep playing like that and running as often as he is and be susceptible as often as he has been early on in the season to contact in the NFL with the football in his hands?
Well, I'm going to say this. I don't like to see him running as much. Of course, he's a talent that can run the ball very well. He's big, he's strong, and so you're going to have to use that for yourself as far as talking about the offense, as far as one of the weapons that you have. I just don't want to see him run that much. So I'm going to say the Colts can't afford to have this young man continually get hurt over the long haul, because if you keep on getting those injuries and things like that, it's going to take its toll. As big as he is and as strong as he is, I know that, but it's going to take its toll over time, and it's going to catch up with him. And I want this young man to have a long, long, long career in the National Football League. And the only way he's going to be able to do that is stay healthy and take care of his body.
Well, they drafted him 4th overall to be here for multiple contracts, right?
Exactly.
8, 10, 12 years, depending on how this go. I mean, that's the goal, Casey.
And this is only one game. If he's borderline, and they say, maybe he can play, maybe not.
Sure.
It's only one game. Like we said, hopefully he has a long career ahead of him.
Well, what needs to change, if anything?
That's a great question, because ultimately you draft him 4th overall, and it's for everything that he brings, and this is part of what he brings. So it's hard to say he's got to change the way he plays.
And you don't want to take that away from him. That's why you drafted him in the first place.
That's why you take him. You understand the risk. I think ultimately, and maybe this is, it's one of those things that will remain to be seen, but I think part of it might be it's such a small sample size, it's hard to kind of pigeonhole him in that.
And it's not like he was really banged up all the time at Florida.
Right. Like it might be one of those things that it might just be 2 highlighted instances right now that forced him to leave the games that maybe he won't see for another 8 weeks. I think ultimately we haven't heard from him, but we heard from, some of the players and the coaching staff, almost like he didn't see – I can't remember the name of the player.
MJ Stewart.
MJ Stewart.
Right.
At the
Sounds
end
like a
zone.
law firm.
Right. It does. Right.
Have you been seriously injured?
Call MJ
by
Stewart.
MJ Stewart.
But it looked almost like, in a way, he let up as he was getting into the end zone, so that hit kind of came at an area where he was, a little more susceptible and he wasn't ready for it. So I think maybe that is an area he's got to be a little bit more aware of. Maybe if you get to the end zone, let's just go ahead and run to the back. Just go ahead and make sure you're clear of everything. So I'm sure there's areas you can, heighten in on and say you got to, be more cautious here or there. But I think ultimately these might just be two areas where, when we look at it at a lengthy time, they were just freak accidents.
I'm hoping that's the case. I mean,
Right.
I'm hoping that at the end of the season, we're not still talking about this, and we can still maybe at the end of the year we can compartmentalize. Yeah, man, it was a really rocky start for Anthony Richardson at the beginning of the season in terms of health. That concussion that was just a blip on the radar. Because I don't think you want to take away his natural abilities.
No.
Again, that's why you drafted him, and you're going to have to also going to have to tell me what he's supposed to do differently on these last couple of plays. I mean, if you go back to Week 1 against the Jaguars, he's trying to make a play, he's trying to get into the end zone. He's inside the 5-yard line, and then he exits the game. All right? I mean, he's trying to get into the end zone to make it a one-score game. I mean, what's he supposed to do?
Exactly.
And then in this game, I know it's been bantered about on social media and sports talk radio on how he kind of let up a little bit or maybe downshifted.
Yeah.
I don't really see that on the film. Maybe I'm looking at it differently, but, I mean – I know he's talked about, when the game's on the line or it's a gotta-have-it type of situation, that's when, you have a different mentality. He's going to be smart, I think, for the most part. But, I mean, he's at the goal line.
Yeah.
Get in the end zone. That's what he did.
Opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to score.
So, I mean, I'm hoping that's the case here going forward with Anthony Richardson. All right, the second, can you afford it? Let's talk about Zack Moss's workload. You love what he produced, and again, he's coming up on the podcast in just a second. 88 yards, 18 carries, got in the end zone. But, Bill, he was the only running back for the Colts to run the football in week number 2. He played 56 of 57 snaps, by far for Zack Moss, a career high in terms of participation percentage. Can the Colts afford that going forward?
Well, I don't know about the number of plays, but as far as the carries, I think he's fine with that. 18 carries.
Sure.
If he's out there in the backfield, 18 carries. He was targeted 4 times as far as in the passing game, caught all 4 balls. So,
but that committee, it was going to be by committee.
Exactly. It was going to be
Moss
by
was
committee.
the committee.
Yeah, he was. It was a one-man committee on last Sunday. So I don't know about playing 55 plays the whole season. Like, say if he plays 98% of the snaps the whole season, I don't know if that will be good for him and good for the offense, but I think if, get some plays where he's in there, take him out, get him a break, some plays that he might not be needed as much on certain plays that you're going to run. But I think having Zack Moss back there and the way he can run, how hard he runs and how physical he is, that bodes well for the Colts offense.
See, I look at it as you can afford it, and one of the good things you do see is you see that he can do it.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing for me is
And two, excuse me, not to cut you off, but there was
good.
the Colts only had 57 snaps on offense.
That's where I was going.
It's a little skewed.
It was one of those things when I looked at the snap counts after, I didn't realize that I mean, maybe I didn't realize that he was on there for, literally no other running back was out there. And that was maybe a little bit of a shock, but it didn't look like it was an over-the-top of usage in the flow of the game. So I think that was what it was. He looked like he solidified that spot to be that week the bell cow guy, and every time he got the ball, he was fighting for extra yards. You could see I felt like the offensive line just kind of felt that presence. Like they liked that banger mentality that he's trying to get every extra yard he can. So I loved kind of what the whole offense kind of embodied from him.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt like he kept me on the field. I mean, Shane talked about we're going to ride the hot hand, and I never thought there was an area where his hand wasn't hot, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt like he was out there, and I think you can afford it. I think it's going to be different. It's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
There's going to be a need where you might need to spell him here and there, but you saw that Zack Moss can take on the workload. And I think that was very, very good to see.
There's no pitter-pattering at the line of scrimmage by Zack Moss.
No.
And to your point, the offensive line loves that. And I think naturally this is going to smooth out because, again, you only had 57 snaps. A time of possession, we'll talk about that coming up more in just a second. But Colts only had the ball for, 25, 26 minutes in this game, which speaks to how efficient they were being on offense.
Exactly.
They scored a lot of points while not possessing the ball for a very long time. But, I think the week before, Evan Hull goes down. He's on IR. Dion Jackson had the forgettable game. It was Zack Moss coming back. I think it was just like, all right, Zack Moss is going to be our guy after we only had whatever it was, 25 yards rushing from running backs in week number 1. I think this will smooth out. I think the Colts will get back on track to being
Yes.
a running back by committee approach within their rushing attack.
I agree with you. But like you said, Zach looked good at the end of the game.
He did.
I mean, he didn't look like he was like really fatigued
Yeah.
or tired or anything like that. So he looked good. So the man can do it if asked to do it.
And Dion Jackson's here for a reason. Again,
Yes.
I know he had
Right.
the two lost fumbles in week 1, but he's still on the team, right? He's
Yes.
still an NFL player. He's shown what he can do last year in 2022. Had that big game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. By the way, I don't know where to look here. I'm back and forth. I'm like
going back and
I said
forth.
earlier, I'm like a linebacker with my head on a swivel. Making sure both of you guys are paying attention.
Right.
to me, by
Oh,
the way.
we're trying.
We're
yeah.
But I'm just
to-
saying,
trying to follow you.
Yeah, Dion Jackson is still on this roster. He can still be a very good running back.
I mean, with Dion, we've all had those days where it wasn't going your way, and DJ had one that it's one of those things. I'm sure he would tell you the same thing, that it was just it was a bad day on the field, and he's ready to right that ship, and that's one of the things that you're right. He's here for a reason, and he's
Gotta
shown
use
some
him.
really good times.
You got to use him. He's active. You got to let him play. All right, can you afford it? Number 3, Alec Pierce, guys, only 3 catches for 33 yards and 5 targets through the first 2 games. Obviously, the passing game has relied heavily on Michael Pittman Jr. MPJ only has 16 catches so far on the season, already over 100 yards receiving. Can the Colts, Bill, afford to not have Pierce involved in the passing game to the extent that he has not been to this point?
You have to get him involved in the passing game. You definitely do. You don't want this to be a one-dimensional type of offense where you're throwing the ball to one guy and you're running with one guy all the time. You have to mix it up and diversify your offense a little bit to get these guys involved, and it keeps defenses off balance when you do that. And for the Colts, you want to get some plays down the field. You have to open up the offense, get some big plays down the field. Now, in saying that, the Colts have done a nice job of taking what the defenses have given them and moving the ball down the field. But when you have opportunity to take those big shots down the field, you're going to need that. And Alec Pierce is that guy to go down the field that you're going to need to open up the offense to get some plays down the field.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would say as well. I think one of the ways that you may have to just try to use him in a different way. I mean, he is your deep ball, your 50-50, go up and get it
Stretch
kind
guy.
of guy, stretch the defense. But maybe it's one of those things that I'm a big believer in this. I've never played in the NFL, but you have, Bill. I mean, one of those things, just getting some confidence and letting everything just you get a couple in you, and all of a sudden you're ready to go. I think getting him involved early, and maybe it's just just like a 6-yard out, just something. Just get him involved early, and outside of what you would typically see Alec Pierce, and maybe that's one way you can kind of open up. But I agree, he is a guy that he's going to be important when you look at the longevity of the season. You're going to want Alec Pierce involved. So I think it is one of those things that I'm sure the coaching staff is saying the same things we're doing right now.
I'm sure
They're trying to get him involved. They know how important he is and what he can do to defenses. So I'm sure it's an effort. They're really trying to get him involved. We'll just see if it comes to fruition soon.
I'm sure they're trying to get him involved. But as you talked about as players, personally, I love having a play early in the game.
Right.
Just to get the ball in my hands, just to get hit, get tackled, whatever it may be. Then you're into the game. I mean, I'm into the game if I don't get a catch or anything like that. But to have a ball come to me, knowing I know the ball's coming to me, and I'm going to catch it, get hit, just gets the juices flowing and get right into the game immediately.
You look at the stats. I mean, the Colts put up 31 points the other day, but I think so far in the season, the Colts only have 1 pass completion on a ball, Bill, that's traveled over 20 yards down the field.
Wow.
It's been a lot of, whether that's Richardson or Gardner Minshew, it's been a lot of intermediate throws, obviously especially more so with Richardson. But, we fully expect the Ravens, not to get too schematical, but a preview of this game defensively from Baltimore, we fully expect them to do more of what Jacksonville did than what Houston did up front along that defensive line, which means I think it's going to be more difficult for the Colts to run the football than it was against the Houston Texans, which means you got to win more matchups outside. That's where Pierce comes into play.
Yeah, you have to throw the ball. That's what I'm saying. You don't want to be so one-dimensional that, okay, we run the ball. We're doing a good job running the ball. We're going to run the ball. You have to pass the ball down the field, open up your offense, keep the defense off balance, and just hopefully just diversify your offense so you can be efficient in getting the ball down the field. And then also, I'll talk about this later, but you want to control the clock as well going down the field, especially against the Baltimore Ravens.
All right, the game was somewhat out of hand in week number 2. The Colts had a 2-score lead C.J. Stroud, had a big fourth quarter, if you will, 190 yards passing. But the hard truth of it is, fellas, the Colts now have been outscored 24-0 in the fourth quarter so far this season. Last year they had the widest margin in the fourth quarter in terms of being outscored in the final period in 2022. And I hate to bring this up because it's a nightmare, but in 2021, Week 5 at Baltimore, Monday Night Football game, Colts were up big, 19 points in the third quarter. They were outscored 16-3 in the fourth quarter as the Ravens completed that epic come-from-behind win. We know about the Mark Andrews game. We know about the Lamar Jackson game. Career high, franchise record, 442 passing yards against the Colts in that game. Casey, I'll start with you. Can the Colts afford to keep having big fourth quarters allowed going forward?
No.
I mean, you just can't do it.
You can't do it. I mean, unless you're up 40 points in the first three quarters, which is not going to happen. That's the NFL. We've talked about
the Minnesota Vikings proved that.
That's true. I mean, we've talked about this. I mean, last year, I believe I don't remember what the exact historical value is, but the point differential last year was one of the all-time high, lowest in NFL history. Just a one-score game throughout the entire season. So fourth quarter is huge because every game you look across the scoreboards, let's say you look in the third quarter on any given Sunday, you look at teams where you're like, oh, they're going to blow them out. And all of a sudden you look at the score and it's 21-14. They have the football, down a score late in the game.
Yeah.
So that's why fourth quarter, you have to figure that out. It's one of those things where last week, it kind of was what it was. The game was already essentially won.
I think the 24-point margin for the Colts is a little skewed because of last week.
Right.
But it goes back to what we talked about in our podcast last Thursday. We sat here and talked about, does it feel different? Well, the Colts in the fourth quarter against the Jacksonville Jaguars didn't make enough plays. Jacksonville did. In that case, it didn't feel different. And, we're still going to talk about it until it's not something to talk about, Bill.
Exactly. I agree. And I think they can't afford to blow big leads in the fourth quarter. They have to be out there and stop teams. I mean, it's not just the defense. This is a whole team thing because offensively you have to control the clock.
Right.
You want to eat some ground up, eat some clock up, eat some ground by moving the ball down the field, getting first downs, moving the ball, pinning them back as far as possible. And if you have to punt, that's fine. Punt the ball. Keep them back in their own end zone, back in their own side of the football field. Yes, make them drive it. And then that way it's going to eat up some more clock. So this is on all phases, not just the defense. The defense has to do their job. Don't get me wrong. They have to stop people. But the offense has to do a good job of moving the ball down the field. The special teams have to do a good job of pinning them back in their own end zone.
Bill Brooks right there, Casey Vallier. I'm Matt Taylor. Let's double back to the guy that we talked about earlier, Zack Moss, 88 yards, 18 carries, found the end zone in his first game in 2023. He's our special guest this week on the official Colts podcast. He joined myself and Bill Brooks a little bit earlier today to talk about Week 2 and then looking forward to the Ravens in Week 3. All right, joining us now on the official Colts podcast. He's fresh off week number 2, 88 yards on the ground, 18 carries, found the end zone for the first time in 2023. He wears number 21. His name is Zack Moss. Zack, thanks for the time, man. How are you?
I'm all good, man. Appreciate you guys.
How you feeling? I mean, you're coming off, as I said, a big game against the Houston Texans. We'll talk about that workload in just a second, but how good did it feel to get back on the regular season game field for the first time for you since about January of earlier this year?
Yeah, I mean, it felt great. I mean, didn't have camp, right, and only did OTAs technically.
Yep.
So getting back out there with the guys, man, and then getting the win made it even better, right? I think that was the most important thing out of anything else for personal reasons or anything like that. So just getting the win, a divisional win on the road, and then just getting out there and being able to have a little success. Super, super happy about it.
Now, you talked about you missed some time in camp, but last week was your first game back as far as some physical activity. Yeah. How does your body feel right now?
I had a rough first couple of days. We late in the week now, so I'm feeling a lot better and just been trying to, get as fresh as I possibly can for Baltimore this week. But I feel good right now, though.
Yeah, you played 56 of 57 snaps. That's 98%. I was not good at math, but I can do that math. You were the only running back for the Colts to carry the football down in Houston. Did you know going into that game, like you were ready to be the bell cow, the workhorse, whatever you want to call it, the main guy within the running game?
I knew probably was going to do like 80%.
Yeah.
Right, since we're talking percentages. Didn't think I was going to get that many snaps, being fresh out.
Yeah.
First game back, first action, all that type of stuff. But the body responded well to it. I was able to go out there, outside of being physically sharp, but being mentally sharp still, and just being able to execute all the plays.
Yeah, I mean, Shane Steichen has said in the past, going back to training camp, it's going to be a running back by committee approach, but we're going to, as the game goes on, we're going to go with a hot hand. I mean, you were on fire in that game. Did you feel yourself getting in the zone, even though it was your first game back, or your first game, I should say, this year in 2023?
No, I felt like I was rusty.
Really?
Yeah. If I had 100 yards, I probably would have told you something different. But no, I felt like I was a little bit rusty, man. I think just getting back out there, practice. I had a good week of practice, which gave me a lot of confidence going into that game. And then as the game kind of went, I felt better, right, winning a lot of one-on-ones, which was kind of big for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, just being able to get to where I feel like I'm making all my reads, all my cuts, and I'm feeling really good and,
Mm-hmm.
Delivering a lot of blows and all that type of stuff. That's where I'm still trying to get back to where I'm feeling just like 100% me. But, I think week 2 was, pretty decent.
I'll say.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about you had a good game. I thought the offensive line played well.
Yeah.
How impressed were you with the play of the offensive line?
Yeah, so many people was making the big thing about those guys, last year and all that type of stuff in the media. But, even the last few games of the year that I played with them, I thought we had a lot of, continuity, doing a lot of good things well. And that just kind of carried over into this year. And those guys, went into, OTAs, training camp, just in a certain mindset to be dominant. And they've been able to do that these first 2 weeks. I think obviously getting Coach Tony in there as well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with what, the knowledge that he brings to those guys, and then allowing those guys to just be them, and go out there and dominate. And, as much as we kind of run the ball, and you run the ball early, those guys get to start teeing off real early in the game. So, they get, oiled up real fast.
Yeah. Since, you go back to last year, at the end of last season, Jonathan Taylor goes out. The last 4 games of the season, you're the guy. You're the starting running back. And since that time, when you factor in Sunday's game as well, dating back to last year with the Colts, you're averaging like 5.4 yards per carry. You just talked about the offensive line. Why do you think this is such a great fit for you, running the football? Because you're really efficient doing it.
Yeah, going back to college, right? I think being in the offense that is like kind of run first, where I'm getting, 15 plus carries, for, as a back, you get better as the game goes, right?
Yeah.
It's only so many times where you see dudes just have 6 carries for 150 yards, right? So you got to get going, and this offense allows guys in the backfield to get going, and lean on us a lot. And then, after that, then the offensive line does a great job of just being where they're supposed to be, and then we just try to, make their job a little easier with moving linebackers and stuff like that. So, I felt real good here, just being able to do what I've always been able to do, even dating back to school.
I want to piggyback off of that. I think when Shane first got here, he said, we want to pass to score and we want to run to win. How does that make you feel as a running back, knowing that the running game is going to be that important to the offense to be successful, and not just to the offense, but to the team to be successful?
It's beautiful. My first 3 years, I wasn't in the offense that, was in that type of mindset, being in Buffalo. It was more very pass heavy. So now getting more carries than I ever did in my time there, in an offense that wants to run the ball and wants to run it downhill, right? Not just strictly outside zones and things of that nature, but, it allows me to play into my kind of style.
Going back to last week, conditioning for you obviously wasn't a problem with those 18 carries, your first game of the season, but you broke your forearm.
Yeah.
I think it was July 31st. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first day of full pads for the Colts in training camp. That's a drag for you, obviously, coming off a great ending to 2022 for you. How did you stay in shape physically and mentally? I know it's it's an upper body injury, so to speak. But when you're not on the football field, that's just it's hard to replicate football shape, so to speak. How did you do that?
Yeah, I was down the first few weeks, probably like 2-3 weeks. I was down for sure. Just couldn't move it and do that type of stuff. But the training staff has done a great job. Everyone in this training staff, Doug, has done a great job of just getting me in shape and making me run a lot of stuff, which is, those days you're like, you hate it. But, I was able to just be in the mindset to just like, really take it seriously and not kind of just jog through them and just dog them and things like that. And just know that, when I do come back, I was going to rely on that type of conditioning and all that type of stuff. So I think, it just showed up week 2, being able to play that many snaps. And not really needing a breather and coming out of that game feeling, outside of being sore, but, cardiovascular-wise, just feeling really good.
I looked at the Ravens, how they played this past couple of weeks, and their defense looks pretty good. You've watched them on film this week. What do you think about their defense? I
mean, they have a great defense. I remember we played them when I was back in Buffalo 2 years ago. Not a lot of different guys, but some different guys in the defense. They do a lot up front, right? A lot of big run stop kind of defensive linemen. I think the strength of their defense is definitely their linebackers, right? Yeah. I think with Roquan and Patrick Queen, you're talking about 2 very, very, very good linebackers, especially in Roquan. Everyone knows that guy. So it's definitely going to be a good challenge for us to try to do what we, replicate what we did last week, and hopefully we can go out there and, duplicate that, but just do it even better.
No doubt about that. That's Zack Moss with us, running back for the Indianapolis Colts. All right, Nugget Alert. You ready for this? Bill Brooks. He knows I like nuggets. All right, Nugget Alert. On Sunday, you forced 7 missed tackles when you were running the football. You have now forced 23 missed tackles since Week 16 of last year. And I watch you play, and you're kind of that one cut back. You run very hard. You're not afraid to lower your shoulder and get yards after contact. But you got a little shimmy about you as well, right? I mean, you're kind of deceptively elusive with the football in your hands. I mean, where does that come from for you? All those missed tackles that you've induced.
Oh man, that's a good question. I think speaking on that, I think my 2 favorite running backs growing up. A lot of people don't know this is a nugget as well.
There you go.
I didn't start playing running back until my senior year in high school.
Okay.
Right. So I was a late bloomer.
What did you play before that?
Linebacker.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Were they just down a couple of injuries? They're like, Zach, you're running the football today. Get over there, dude.
Or did you get an interception and show that you had some running skills?
A run back, right?
People wanted me to play running back for so long, but I never really cared to really do it to that extent. Up until my senior year, where then I transferred out and then I went to another school, and they gave me the just full on right to just go ahead and do that, and I was able to do it. But Aaron Foster and Marshawn Lynch, like you speak to that base and that one cut style, which those 2 dudes are known for. Those 2 dudes that I watched all the time, just consistently over and over, and I think just being able to make people miss, without looking like a guy who can make people miss all the time. I think that just goes back to my childhood, just playing a little throwback football in the park and just trying to make people miss all the time.
Are you aware on the field? Maybe this is a dumb question, but during the game, are you aware of when you force somebody to miss a tackle? Like, how good does that feel?
Yeah, I'm not super aware of it. Like when you just said 7, I didn't think I made 7 people miss, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely thought I made maybe 1 or 2 guys miss, and then we go on the sideline, we joke about it, we laugh about it.
Get out of here! Like you do one of those, like, dude.
I'm like, yeah, all right.
Smell you later, bro.
1 or 2 dudes miss for sure. But that's last week, and now everything is about just trying to get better every week.
Now we talk about your running skills, and definitely can run the ball very well. I want to talk about your pass catching skills. You were targeted 4 times last week, cut off 4 balls.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your pass catching skills?
I think I'm pretty good catching the ball.
Okay, you look good.
Yeah, I just never been in an offense that's been able to. I've been allowed to do too much pass catching. Okay. But I think if people take a look at the numbers and things like that, and look at drop rate and targets and all that type of stuff, I think I'm pretty decent.
Okay.
All right, last one for me is wrapping up here with Zack Moss. Let's talk about Zack Moss, the guy. Let's talk about Zack Moss, the father. I know it's been kind of a whirlwind for you. Traded in the middle of last year. Now you're the starting running back. But also in the summertime, it was a big summer for you. You welcome in your first child, your baby boy, 3 months old. How's that going for you, and what do you enjoy most about being a father of an infant?
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing, no matter what, right? I think, I always wanted to be a dad, and, being able to welcome a son with my wife was just the best thing ever, right? You think about, being traded, all these different things that you can't really control.
Yeah.
But the thing that I knew I can control, is how to be a husband, how to be a father, and all those type of things, and still learning, right? Only 3 months in.
Oh, you got a long way to go, pal.
Yeah, believe me.
You got a long way to go.
Still learning. You're going to continue to learn. As long as
This is an all-pro dad, and I'm like 3 Pro Bowls in,
But I'm still learning, but it's literally the best, no matter what, happens outside of, with football and, just anything else that, I may endeavor in my life, I definitely want to be the best I can be. To my wife and my son.
Oh, well said right there. That's a good man. Zack Moss, fresh off of 88 yards and a touchdown against the Houston Texans. We all 3 share something in common. We like being dads.
Yes.
But I'm telling you what, this guy is a former NFL great, a current NFL great over here to my right, and I'm just a white guy named Matt, right? So we're just hanging out here. Zack, I appreciate your time more than you know, man.
Absolutely,
Congratulations, and best of luck on Sunday.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
That's Zack Moss from earlier today. We're back here on the official Colts podcast. Bill Brooks sticking around. Casey Vallier is back. I'm Matt Taylor. And Zack Moss and the Colts looking to steal a game in Baltimore, if you will. Colts have not won in the Charm City since 2009. And I think the Ravens are 88-34 record-wise at home under John Harbaugh since 2008. Which is one of the best home records in the NFL in that time. So a very difficult place to play. Colts are looking for a 2-1 record going into week number 4 as the Baltimore Ravens are 2-0 for the first time for their franchise since 2020. All right, closing out here with the Baltimore Bullet Points. All right, there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of keys to the game, if you will. But, Bill, I'm starting with you. Give me your Baltimore Bullet Point, the one thing the Colts have to do. Maybe it's a underlying thing, maybe it's like a hidden gem, but your one thing you're going to be watching for on Sunday in order for the Colts to come out victorious.
It's pretty simple. There's no hidden gem for
All
me.
right.
Contain Lamar Jackson.
Perfect.
I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, the guy is very explosive. He can throw the ball very well, which I think he's underrated in regards to how he throws the ball down the field, but I don't think he's underrated in how well he runs the football and how explosive he can be back there in the backfield. So I think the Colts defensively need to make sure they surround him, put some pressure on him, and keep him in the pocket so he doesn't get out of the pocket and make those big plays.
And it's all about the pass rush, too. You just talked about the pocket. The pocket is formed sort of like this, right? A pass rush against Lamar Jackson, the most effective pass rush against a player like this, it's a straight line wave where everybody is staying within their lane. They have lane integrity. That way he has nowhere to go, either stepping up into the pocket on a pass play or break and contain on a running play.
He uses the whole field. I mean, I'm talking about horizontal.
Absolutely.
He uses the whole field. So you have to
east-west.
So you have to make sure that you keep him so much that he's only going to run horizontally, that he's not going to get up the field vertically and make those big plays.
All right, containing Lamar Jackson, Casey Vallier.
So mine is kind of in the similar point, but it's the run game. That's one of the areas right now where the Colts defense, per usual, it seems like the last handful of years, this Colts defense has been very, very good against the run. It remains that way this year, leading the league as far as yards per carry. They're like 5th, I think, in yards per game. But the thing on the other side is the Ravens, yes, Lamar has had a great passing year this year, over 70-some-odd%. He's looked really, really good under the new Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator in Baltimore. But their whole offense is geared around the run. They have been a run-heavy team for a long time. And since Lamar Jackson took over as a starting quarterback in 2018, they're averaging 179 rushing yards per game, which is the most in the NFL.
Say it again.
179 rushing yards
that's
per
their
game.
average.
Yes, this is an average. So, not like, I mean, you almost pencil this in, almost 200 yards rushing per game. If you're an offensive coordinator, you're like, just what else do you want me to do? I mean, that is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost 30 yards more than second, which is Derrick Henry and the Titans in that time frame. So
it's insane.
It's one of those things where you look at the strength of the Colts and the strength of the Ravens. You know, that they lost Justice Hill this week. He looks like, you know, we're taping this Thursday. Not sure if he's going to play on Sunday due to his, I think it's a turf toe injury he's got going on. Also, you know, we saw J.K. Dobbins leave in week 1. So Gus Edwards is their bell cow with some veterans in Melvin Gordon. They just signed Kenyon Drake. We saw him during training camp. So they don't have the full bevy of options that they always have. But Lamar Jackson serves as a pretty darn good number 2 running back, as if you put that out there. So the running game for me is so key. I love what this Colts defensive line does in the run game. It's very, very important this Sunday if they want to have a chance to get a victory containing the run.
I like it. All right, I got 2. I'm kind of stealing the show here. I apologize. But I think
hey, you're the host. You can do
there's just
that.
you can do that. There's just a lot of stuff to do in this game in order to win because I think the Ravens are just solid.
They
They're
are
just
very
a solid
Yep.
football team. They're not going to blow you away with superstars, but they don't have a lot of weaknesses on their roster. So you brought up Lamar Jackson. You complimented it. You got to take away the security blanket. Like, you got to take away Linus' security blanket in this game. That's Mark Andrews, man.
Yeah.
Again, I hate to bring up the 2021 game.
PTSD
but,
is real, man.
Every pass was going to the tight end, and we're just thinking to ourselves, how does he keep getting open? He caught 11 of 13 balls that night for 147 yards, and 2 touchdowns, by the way, and a 2-point conversion.
Yes.
But his receiving total that night was the highest total allowed by the Colts to an opposing tight end since they moved to Indianapolis.
Wow.
So got to take him away. I mean, I know they've got great players on the outside. We'll see about Odell Beckham. We'll see about Zay Flowers. But these guys, I mean, Jackson and Andrews are in the same draft class.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like T.Y. Hilton, Andrew Luck chemistry.
That's
why I say the security blanket.
Yeah.
You got to take him away. And then the other thing, and I think you might have been highlighting this, Bill. I don't want to steal your thunder on this, but stay on the field.
Yeah.
Time of possession in this game is going to be really big. I mean, Ravens can't score if they're not on the field. And you bring this up because the Colts have been under 30 minutes of time of possession in both games so far.
Yeah.
And I know that's a little bit deceiving because of last week, really, really efficient scoring the football. But what you can't do is you can't afford 3 and outs in this game.
Is key.
And I bring that up because the Colts have gone 3 and out on 37% of their drives so far this season.
Wow.
That's 31st in the NFL, or second highest or second worst in the league. And the Ravens defense, they have forced their opponents to go 3 and out 31% of the time so far through two games. That's the 4th highest percentage on this young season. So I think, Bill, you need to be up around 33, 35 minutes of time of possession to win this game.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier. You know, you're talking about third downs, being successful on third downs. Well, you're only going to be successful on third downs if you're good on first and second down and you're moving the ball down the field, you're eating up the clock.
Right.
And also, not just eating up the clock, but we have to score as well. You know, we have to score points, too. And when you get in the red zone, we talk about red zone scoring, so we have to score some touchdowns when we get in the red zone. But you know what? If we get a field goal, that's fine. But eat up the clock. Let's keep Lamar Jackson and that offense on the sideline watching us go up and down the field.
Absolutely. Like Rick Venturi said earlier this week, to steal a line from him, and no disrespect to the Houston Texans where they're at right now, but you know, the Colts are now, they're swimming in the deep end, all right? The Baltimore Ravens they're a stiff challenge, and a lot has to go right for the Colts to win this football game, and that speaks to the Ravens and you know, their credibility and how good of a football team they are. But I think you can say the same thing about Baltimore. They have to play really well to beat the Colts, all right? So I think it's going to be a really, really good football game. 1 o'clock on Sunday in Baltimore. Casey Vallier right there. Bill Brooks, I'm Matt Taylor. Thanks for joining in on the Thursday edition of the Official Colts Podcast with the Thursday crew. Also, our thanks to Zack Moss, who joined us earlier today and provided some really good insight. I mean, he said he's rusty. If that's rusty, 88 yards, I don't want to see a little WD-40 on there.
No.
Really good in week 3 now.
I want to see him being ready to go and have some WD-40 on him. I really want to see that and what he looks like.
Take away that creak on the door. Zack Moss is looking good. We'll definitely hope to see that coming up in week number 3. Again, for Casey and Bill, I'm Matt Taylor. We will talk to you next Tuesday on the Official Colts Podcast, YouTube, and also on the Colts Audio Network, Colts.com, and the Colts mobile app. Wherever you get us, we're back next week talking more Colts football.